In 51 BCE, the Gallic Wars reached their climax in a final desperate stand at Uxellodunum. Julius Caesar, having already subdued much of Gaul, turned his attention to the last pockets of resistance. The stakes had never been higher for both sides, as the outcome of this siege would determine the fate of the Gallic tribes and solidify Roman dominance over the region. In a dramatic showdown that would resonate through history, Caesar prepared to crush the final remnants of Gallic defiance. Uxellodunum was strategically located on a hill, providing its defenders with a natural advantage. The town was fortified with thick walls and a strong population determined to resist Roman rule. The Gauls, led by a chieftain named Lucterius, had united several tribes in a last-ditch effort to fend off the Romans. Vercingetorix's earlier defeat at Alesia had cast a long shadow, and Lucterius was determined not to let history repeat itself. Caesar approached Uxellodunum with an army seasoned by years of conflict. His legions, battle-hardened and disciplined, were ready to execute the strategies that had brought him victory time and again. The Roman general understood that the siege would require not only military might, but also psychological warfare. The Gallic defenders needed to know that resistance was futile. Upon arriving at Uxellodunum, Caesar quickly set up a blockade, cutting off all supply routes to the town. He ordered the construction of siege works, including ramparts and ditches, to encircle the settlement completely. Roman engineers and soldiers worked tirelessly, demonstrating the efficiency and organization that characterized the Roman military. The blockade isolated the defenders, and as days turned into weeks, the situation within Uxellodunum began to deteriorate. Inside the fortress, the mood was grim. Lucterius and his warriors faced mounting pressure as food supplies dwindled. The once hopeful atmosphere among the defenders began to turn to desperation. Caesar's strategy of attrition was working. The psychological toll of the siege weighed heavily on the Gallic defenders. The cries of the hungry echoed through the walls, and morale faltered as the realization set in that help from the outside was unlikely. In response to the dire circumstances, Lucterius organized raids against the Roman camps in an attempt to disrupt their operations and gather intelligence. However, these attacks were poorly coordinated and met with fierce resistance from Caesar's legions. The Romans, well prepared for such tactics, quickly repelled the Gallic raids, further demoralizing the defenders. Caesar, sensing the time was right to escalate his assault, ordered a direct attack on the walls of Uxellodunum. Roman siege engines, including ballistae and catapults, were brought to bear against the fortifications, raining down destruction on the town's defences. The sound of crashing stones and the screams of the wounded filled the air as the Romans pressed their advantage. As the siege continued, Lucterius made a desperate appeal to the neighbouring tribes, calling for a united stand against the Romans. Some responded, motivated by a sense of honour and the desire to protect their homeland. However, the lack of a coordinated response weakened their efforts. The Romans, having effectively isolated Uxellodunum, were determined to snuff out any hope of reinforcements reaching the beleaguered town. After several weeks of relentless assault, the Roman forces finally breached the outer walls of Uxellodunum. The Gallic defenders, exhausted and outnumbered, fought valiantly to protect their home, but were no match for the disciplined Roman legions. The battle devolved into brutal hand-to-hand combat as the Romans pushed forward. In the midst of the chaos, Lucterius rallied his warriors for one final stand. He urged them to fight for their freedom, their families, and their land. Though their spirits were high, the odds were stacked against them. As the Romans pressed on, the defenders fought with fierce determination, but began to falter under the overwhelming pressure. In the end, the siege concluded in tragedy for the Gallic forces. Caesar's soldiers swept through Uxellodunum, asserting Roman dominance over the last bastion of resistance. The defenders, faced with defeat, fought bravely until the very end, but their efforts were in vain. The Romans emerged victorious, marking the conclusion of the Gallic Wars. The aftermath of the siege was a harsh reminder of the consequences of defiance against Roman rule. Caesar demonstrated mercy to some of the surviving defenders, but he also imposed harsh penalties on those who had resisted. Many were executed while others were enslaved, ensuring that the lesson of Uxellodunum would not soon be forgotten. The brutality of the siege and the subsequent punishment served as a stark warning to any remaining tribes considering resistance. With the fall of Uxellodunum, the once powerful Gallic tribes were effectively subdued, and Roman control over Gaul was solidified. Caesar's triumph marked the end of large-scale Gallic resistance, paving the way for the integration of Gaul into the Roman Empire. The legacy of the Gallic Wars would resonate throughout history, shaping the future of the region and influencing Roman policy for generations to come. In conclusion, the Siege of Uxellodunum was not merely the final chapter of the Gallic Wars. It was a pivotal moment that underscored the relentless expansion of Roman power and the tragic fate of the Gallic tribes. The battle highlighted the complexities of identity, culture, and resistance in ancient Europe, serving as a reminder of the human spirit's resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. As we reflect on this decisive moment in history, we gain insight into the struggles for power, control, and autonomy that continue to shape societies to this day.